So let's get started. Now, if this is the first time you've been able to join us from one of our Tuesday webinars, we've pretty much been focusing for, what is this, the third or fourth week in a row now on just ICD-10, Jessica?
Pretty sure we're up to 5 or 6 now.
5 or 6? Sorry, I've miscounted everybody. ICD-10 has been hectic, but we're looking forward to it. And so Jessica and I have done this, and we've had Dr. Brian Capra on with us, and we've also had Dr. John Davila from Custom Chiro Solutions with us. Today, it most likely will just be Jess and I. Every now and then, Dr. Brian jumps in. My name is Jason Barnes. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here, and we've got Jessica Pancoast, who runs our help desk and our training team. So she's been working with a lot of practices and both our internal teams to make sure that we're ready for October 1. And the purpose of this webinar is to get you guys prepared for October 1. And so we want to make sure, and I'll just blow this up so everybody can see it a little more easily, is we're going to be covering a few things today. We want to go over that interface, making sure you understand how to navigate it, what to do with it. We want to make sure you know how to map your favorite or the most commonly used ICD-9 codes to your ICD-10 codes. We want to make sure that you're able to create a record of the ICD-10s that you will most likely use the most that map over. We want to give you a good idea of what's happening on the back end so that you know what you have to do to make sure that claims go out correctly, which, hint, hint, it's not that much, which is great. And then finally, we want to give you a really good idea of what's going to happen in the future and how we're preparing for it. So those will be the things that we cover on today's webinar. And to start, I'm actually going to go into ICD-9 codes first. So we're going to do that right now. We want to talk ICD-10, but to talk ICD-10, you have to be able to know which ICD-9 codes you use the most time. And it's been our experience that most doctors who practice, and I've actually brought up a practice here that has been with us for a number of years, 5 or 6 years, and I'm actually going to show you guys the codes that this practice has done. I've been able to anonymize them so that we can't see which practice it is, but we're going to be able to see which ICD-9 codes this practice has used over the last year. And so first I'm going to start by showing you the results and just making sure everyone can see this. I'm actually going to blow it up a little bit more. For the last year, meaning from September 22nd through September 22nd, there were 19 CPT codes that this practice used. 19 CPT codes can translate into a lot of ICD-10 codes. However, we want to make sure we focus on the ones that we use most often. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. So I don't want people to think, well, I'm going to all of a sudden start choosing hundreds and hundreds of codes here. Our experience and our preparation is telling us that most offices will not have to choose that many codes moving forward. And you'd be surprised how many ICD-10 codes for some very popular chiropractic codes actually don't require much in the way of selection because a lot of them have a one-to-one match. So I'm going to just show you this result very fast and then show you actually how to get it. So in this case, I'll scroll down to the bottom here. We have 6,693 claims submitted by this practice in the last year. 1,424 of them were for this particular code, 723.2. 739.1 had a whopping 841, and your 847.2 had 817. You can see that a majority of the visits fell under the top 6 or 7 codes. Our recommendation to everyone right now is to be able to run this report in the system right now and make sure that you can see which codes that you have to focus on and utilize when you're putting in ICD-10 codes, because we want to be able to map these over. To do that, we're going to start by going to Reports, Billing Analytics, and your Billing Stats report. That brings up the report we're looking at right here. we want to make sure that you're able to see the right metrics as well. So once you put in your date range, you're going to choose diagnosis. Here we've got a few different ones that say diagnosis. Should you come in here and not find the diagnosis as one of the drop-downs, there's an easy way to fix that. Back to reports and billing analytics up in your menu bar, and you come to your billing stats configuration page. I already have it open. It's right here. The billing stats configuration page allows you to see which stats will be in your drop-down as you go to run this report in your own system, okay? This drop-down, if I didn't have diagnosis, I would simply choose diagnosis 1. I would name it as diagnosis. You can actually name it whatever you want. I could call it diagnosis 1 again if I wanted to. Save that, and then refresh my billing stats report by right-clicking on it and clicking the refresh button, and then it would be there in my drop-down to choose diagnosis codes. This is actually a crucial step in your preparation because knowing which codes and understanding how often you use them really helps you prepare for the ICD10 code selection when you start to see the interface in a few minutes. So again, if you are having any questions or you need something clarified, you can chat in a question and we'll be sure to answer it and address it as we're going here. But this particular practice, again, in the last year only used 19 codes, and you can see, the bottom few codes here, 39 point used extraordinarily infrequently. So this practice, much like most of our other practices, will only have to focus on maybe a dozen or so codes to make sure that they're ready for October 1. Okay, I'm going to move on from that, Jess. After we make sure we know which codes we need, we're going to actually start showing you the interface to actually find those codes in the system, and that's where we start to actually delve into the system a little bit more. Great, I'm actually going to make the screen a little bit smaller for this one. So there are 3 areas that we need to talk about, and I'll probably turn the time over to Jess here to actually demonstrate this in just a second. But today we need to talk about the 3 different areas that you need to pay attention to in order to understand how to do ICD-10 code selection. The first is your new ICD-10 button. Jess, you'll have to update me each week. I'm sorry, I don't prepare for this on the call. Is it out to app 1 yet?
App 1 through 4 has the ICD-10 button. When you click on it, it will bring up the pop-up menu. Beta is now bringing you straight to the Diagnosis ICD-10 tab. Got it.
Okay, so, but everybody now, the feature has been released to every single one of our users now, which is perfect. So I don't need to take anybody to an older version, which is really what I wanted to avoid. So that's great. We've got everybody who's watching this webinar should have this function now in their billing and HR screen. This is the first button you'll need to look at. The second area is actually the diagnosis tab here, where we can select codes. And the third area is actually in your assessment, where you choose your ICD-9 codes, as well as there's a new ICD-10 button that we're going to show you how to use. Those are the 3 areas that you're going to need to know how to do this. So we're going to show you the interface first, and then we're going to actually walk you through how you can set up your favorites and start practicing with this, even while you're on the phone call with us today. So Jess, do you mind if I turn that over to you?
Not a problem.
Okay, perfect.
All right, hopefully everyone's seeing my screen now. And I'm going to go ahead into the billing HR, and I think I need to zoom in a little bit for you guys. Now I'm actually on our beta server, which does have the ICD-10 button bringing you to the diagnosis tab now. And that just happened as soon as I came in. As you'll notice, our ICD-10 traffic light, as we've been calling it, is red. This is because the ICD-9s on this patient have not been mapped, selected ICD-10 codes for this patient. So when I first logged into this page, it's going to bring me directly into the diagnosis and ICD-10 tab. to select those codes. Now, of course, I can then go ahead and go on to whatever tab I want. It's just there as a warning, just kind of a heads up right away when you first come in that this needs to be done. Red is indicating that the payer is accepting ICD-10s and you do not have any selected. Yellow is the payer is not yet accepting ICD-10s and you haven't selected any, so it's about time that you might want to plan ahead and start selecting those ICD-10s. And green indicates that you've already selected ICD-10 codes. Whether or not the payer is accepting it, you have selected them and you're all prepared for that patient to start getting those ICD-10 codes. And once that payer is accepting them, we'll be able to send out those codes to have both ICD-9s and ICD-10s on that patient account. All right, so I'm actually going to try and bring this up via the assessment tab just because it comes up in a pop-up and I think it'll display better on the screen. So on our assessment tab, if I click on the ICD-10 diagnosis button, the same widget will come up. It'll just be in a pop-up rather than in that set in the tabs. You'll probably use it more likely in the tabs, but I just think it'll display better. So in this widget, when I go in from the assessment tab, I'm able to do a search up at the top left. You'll see that I have some saved searches down here. These are just searches that I have entered in previously, and I hit this little star icon on the right-hand side because I think it's a search that I'm going to be doing often, and I don't want to have to keep typing it in all the time. So that's how these showed up at the bottom. And if I just go ahead and click on one of them, you'll see that the search will start on the right-hand side, and it'll search for the items that I search for. So in this instance, it's bringing me up the whole list of anything that has the word lumbar in the description. And then you'll see that if I click on any of these codes on the right-hand side, I will also get another star, which I can select to star a favorite code. That way, when I first come in here, when I have searched for nothing, I have all my favorites down here in the favorite section. Once I start searching for something, whether I typed it in or whether I clicked on one of these favorite searches that I have, it's going to filter the favorites that I have selected previously to only show me those codes that match. So then once you've favorited these codes, or whether or not you're just selecting it on the right, to actually enter that code on the claim, all you're going to do is hit this plus sign right here. And that's going to move that code into the selected code area. And then I hit save, and that will be now listed in my note, in my assessment section of my notes. And then I can always move up those codes from my note section using this up arrow. So now I have one of my ICD-10s up here at the top. To go a little further into this widget, once it comes up again, it's going to be mad at me because I closed it and opened it. There we go. All right. So for the search on the right-hand side, I want to give you some more information about these icons. You'll see these green dollar symbols. Those are symbols to indicate that that code is specific enough that you can bill it, and it will most likely get paid, depending on, of course, the reasoning behind those codes and all of that and your documentation. But we do have some codes in the system that will have a red symbol with a circle with a slash through it. I don't see any on this particular search. But those are ones that are not very specific at all, and most likely insurances will not be paying for those codes. So we do try to give you a heads up warning when that happens. I have gotten questions before about why are some of these options on the right gray. Whenever we bring up a code that matches your search, for instance, this M4036, we show you where it came from. What is the higher level code that this came down from? So that is why the M40.3 is here. It's just the top level code for this M40.36. So we do show it, but it is not one that we are suggesting matches your search. So we just put it in gray. All the blue ones are the ones that have matched your search, and the green one is the one that you've actually already selected. And then a couple more things. You'll notice on our beta server, you have these little cloud icons. If you click on one of them, you're actually able to share your codes with the rest of your practice. If you have a practice with multiple practitioners, you can just go ahead and say share with practice, give it a name. The date it's very important just to help you guys keep track of when these files are shared. Just go ahead and hit export, and then everyone else at your practice who wants to get your favorites so they don't have to go in there and favorite them all themselves can go in here and hit the cloud with the up arrow, select from a practice, and then any of the previous shares will be in this drop down and they can select it. That way you don't have to go under each person's account and make all these favorites over and over again. You can just do it that one time. And then one other thing, if you have selected a code and you no longer need that code, you selected it by accident, whatever it might be, that plus sign you'll notice is now a red dash, and you can just click on that and it will remove that selected code. So that is selecting these codes from the assessment tab. It is actually very similar to the ICD10 tab in the diagnosis tab. But on this page, we'll actually show you the GEMS mapping. GEMS stands for General Equivalence Mapping. It's from CMS. And they basically gave us a way to map the codes from ICD-9 to ICD-10, saying that, you know, if this is the ICD-9 code you used, this is most likely the ICD-10 code that you'll want to use. Of course, you should still take a look at it, making sure it makes sense. When you go in via the ICD-10 button, we're going to show you these ICD-9s that you have up at the top, and we're going to put them in orange, letting you know that they are not mapped to anything. And then if we click on that, we go to the search. I'm going to zoom out because it's just a little bit too zoomed in, and all the searches are on the bottom, which just makes it hard to see. So when I click on it, you'll see that it brings up the available mapping right here. And I can add that code, and now it's blue and has a check mark. So we do let you know the GEMS mapping and a way to map it right there. So if you're coming in here and you're clicking on the ICD-10 button on the beta server, this is how you're going to map those codes. Is there anything I missed, Jason?
I don't think so. I mean, there's plenty to add when it comes to specificity, laterality, the initial visit, the subsequent visits. We could, talk about that, but I think it's a good place to stop and ask any questions about how to get an existing ICD-9 code over to an ICD-10. Is there anybody who needed clarification on that? Feel free to type in a question. We would love to address it before we move on and actually start talking about the other codes. So just kind of give everybody a second here to think about that. If there's something else you're looking for, we can do that. Otherwise, our next step, Jess, would be moving on to show them how they can start messing around with it. There are two questions. Oh, Dr. Clark asked about the macros. So we can, if we have time at the end, we can start looking at macros. Dr. Clark, that wasn't a part of our original agenda. We did have overwhelming requests to do another training session with the basic stuff. And then he asked, can you show us again how to save to your favorites for all of our patients?
Yep. All right. So when you're in the ICD-10 widget, assessment tab, diagnosis tab, whichever way you want to get into this widget, You're going to search for your topic. You can search for a specific code if you happen to know what the ICD-10 code is, or you can search just for a topic. And then on the right-hand side, you're going to select the code that you want. And then in the pop-up, there's going to be a star icon, and you're just going to click the star so it's completely filled in. When it's completely filled in, that means it's one of your favorites, and it's going to show up in your matching favorites for all your patients. As soon as you do this on one patient, even if it's a test patient, a dummy patient that you're just playing around with, these codes will be available for all of your patients when you're under your login. If you do have multiple logins in the system, maybe you use a kiosk or anything like that, you will want to use the export button once you've finished selecting all of your favorites and share with the practice. And then under all the other logins, select the import button and choose from a practice share and choose that file that you just saved. That way you'll have all the favorites under every login that you need to at the practice. But for just your own login, as soon as you favorite a code under one patient, it'll be a favorite for all patients.
All right. So if you can write back and make sure that that answered your question, just because we have a bunch of other ones. Doctor, the export button is in the cloud. He's asking about the export button.
Yep, the export button is the file is shared on our servers. It's just linked to your practice. The icons are the cloud little icons. They are currently only on the beta server. So if you need to do that right now because you've already finished selecting all of your codes, you can just go up to the versions menu up at the top and select beta. That will bring you to the beta menu, and these icons will be here. The cloud with the down arrow allows you to export your favorites, and the cloud with the up arrow allows you to import previously saved favorites from someone else.
All right. Perfect. And then, Jess, if you're wondering, we have a lot of other questions to go through. So we're going to, I'll move on from that one. The next doctor asks, is there an order that the insurance companies will reimburse better for? I'll tackle this one, Jess. Right now, we don't know. And in fact, not only don't we know, Dr. Dave, we have been assured by CMS, and then subsequent websites for almost every other major med payer have said they're going to follow Medicare's lead on this, is that for the first year, they're going to pay. And then at some undisclosed date, they're going to decide what is specific enough for a certain type of ailment, and then we'll learn. And that's where being a part of a network will be very helpful, because they're going to pay pretty much all the codes in the beginning, and then they're going to stop. So what they're going to reimburse better for, we don't have specific information right now. But as we begin to learn, we can put those rules in the system to lead and guide you as you're making decisions for coding. So that will take some time, but we will, as soon as we learn those things, the system will be enabled with those rules, and you'll get the notifications and pop-ups and suggestions from us as we're doing it. As far as the order goes, we do not have that. Anything you wanted to add on that, Jess?
No, that's everything we've got so far.
All right, then there's is this all mapped out in your ICD-10 book? Dr. Joy, I'm not sure I quite understand that question. Do you have a better take on that, Jess?
Do we have an ebook?
We did release a small one, just going over the things that you need to go. But I think better resources are, we've actually recorded videos of trainings like this. And Jess, if you could go and show them in the system where yes, you're a step ahead of me.
Yes. So for the next couple weeks, I'm actually going to make sure that the ICD-10 help page stays in your messages and alerts. That way it's really quick access. So if you just go into your messages and alerts on your home screen, you'll find a row for the help page for ICD-10 being updated, mostly because I'm just going in there every couple days and hitting space and saving it again. But if you'll go in here, you'll see we go through all the different areas. As you'll see, I have to update this for the new version on beta where it goes to the diagnosis tab instead. On apps 1 through 4, it actually brings up this pop-up when you click on that traffic light in order to select those ICD-10 codes. But if you go all the way down to the bottom, or actually in the table of contents, there's a link to bring you all the way to the bottom. Jason and I did put together a kind of a condensed version of this call, and you can watch that video right at the bottom. So if you need to review anything that we've been going over on this call, that's a good resource for you.
Dr. Joy, does that answer your question? If you could just type yes or no and then a follow-up. And while you're doing that, Dr. Dave had a follow-up question, which I think we should just address, which I think is awesome that he asked it. Does this increase the likelihood of a post-payment audit? And we're not compliance experts here. However, we had a compliance expert on 2 weeks ago answering that very question. So I would, defer you to the webinar we did with Dr. John Davila, but to paraphrase him just a little bit, he spent most of his time not talking about which codes you're going to choose or how you're going to do it, which is the mechanics of what we're talking about today. But he spent that time making sure that you guys knew about the documentation requirements, because he's definitely under the impression that this will increase likelihood of audits at some point. So just wanted to throw that out. And that webinar, Dr. Dave, you can search the ICD-10 webinar through any question mark, but if you go specifically to the question mark in your Billing and EHR screen, you will get right to it under the EHR tab. If you can just show that one more time, Jess.
Well, you click on that, you go to the EMR section, and you'll see the ICD-10. And you know what? I think I'm going to link the Dr. Davila webinar in here too. I think that'll probably be useful.
You know what? Excellent idea. Let's do it right now. That way nobody has to go looking for it. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let's see here. Let's go for the next one here. If you don't put the diagnosis into the diagnosis tab, will your current ICD-9 diagnosis show up in the diagnosis tab? So if you don't, I'm just going to read it one more time, make sure I got it. If you don't put the diagnosis into the diagnosis tab, will your current ICD-10 diagnosis show up? So I'm assuming that this question has to do with when you're choosing them from the assessment, right? Because otherwise, I'm sorry?
Sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah. So you are going to, Jess, right, if you can show that to him one more time, you are going to have to make sure you hit that button to move it up into the billing portion of not only the note, but the HCFA.
Yep. So when you do it in the assessment tab, this goes in your note to make sure your note matches with your codes, with your billing codes. You're going to want to hit this up arrow. It says copy diagnosis and procedure codes from the assessment and plan tabs. Say yes, and it'll move up any of those ICD-10 codes from your note into the billing portion. It actually moves up any ICD-9 codes as well, and any codes, procedure codes that you have in your plan section that you marked as having been performed that day.
Perfect. All right, Rebecca, let us know if that answers the question. And Dr. Dave gave a very nice "you guys rule," thanks, and Rebecca said yes. So, and then there's another comment from one of our dear doctors in New York who will remain nameless that will not be shared on today's webinar. All right, let me just get to our next question here. And if the doctor has a different login than me, and we're both doing these, do I need to export for each user that would need to see this? I think we touched on this with a follow-up question, but the answer to that question, Jess, is?
Yes. For everyone who needs this, you'll need to export it. So if you want both of them to match, basically what you'll be doing, one of you will be exporting and the other person will be importing, so all the codes will match.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Great. How did you get the ICD-10 listed up with the ICD? I'm sorry, ICD-9. Sorry, he finished his thought on the next line here. Just
I think he means up at the top, just because I've had a couple questions about this.
Okay.
Having both rows up at the top of your travel card is currently on beta, on the beta server. Previously, we only had both rows showing, when you had the fake payer ICD-10 only payer chosen for that patient. But we did recently release an update to our beta server so that ICD-10 row is up there all the time.
So just and just to kind of put a bow on this one, when we go to show them how to do this for themselves, let's just make sure they're on the beta server. So we'll show them that version when we start that training in just a moment or two. Okay.
Okay.
Great. A little bit more is here. How do you get the ICD-10 codes into the mapping section into the diagnosis tab?
Perhaps they mean this section right here. And that happens as soon as you have ICD-9s from a previous claim because they carry over. On our beta server, when you go hit the ICD-10 button up at the top, it opens up the diagnosis tab and the ICD-10 tab with those previously selected ICD-9 codes up at the top in orange. And then you can, of course, map them to ICD-10s. Right from there.
All right. Sorry, I'm just going down the next one here. Will DME codes also be available in the ICD-10 menu?
DME codes are procedure codes, so I'm not quite sure what they're asking for.
I think the simple answer to that is yes. Yes, your durable medical equipment codes will be there. So they should. We could, even if they wanted to put a specific code. And there's one doctor out there who can't hear anything. I'm hoping that I don't know, Jess, if you can. I'll just kind of post my first comment to everyone. And then there was another question in the past 4 to 6. We've got another question here a little bit longer, so give me one moment, everybody. In the past 4 to 6 weeks, I'm seeing insurance companies not paying random codes they paid on other claims are not being paid. I feel this may be because the insurance company thinks it will be missed due to ICD-10 change happening, and I'm wondering if anyone else is seeing this and if this is something Jess's team has something in place to take care of. I can tell you we've not seen anything like this on a large scale for this doctor that wrote in. We very much would, we can find trends like this fairly simply if we see that Blue Cross Blue Shield across the nation's not paying a specific diagnosis code. We tend to be able to latch onto that. Our system has monitors that's looking for that sort of thing. We haven't noticed anything on a large scale. If somebody else wanted to type in that they were having experience, I would love to hear about it. Only other thing to really say about that is what we plan on doing about it in the future is a little bit different. As we see that there are going to be specific codes, and Jess, can you go back into the interface where you are able to see your ICD-10 code selections, please?
I'm in the widget right now on the diagnosis.
Okay, got it. So over to the right-hand side there. Sorry about that. I was just looking at a different screen for a moment. Over on the right-hand side where you see a code here with the dollar sign, the green and the dollar sign, meaning it's a payable code, we're going to include notifications separate from that and refining it to show you which ones are actually being paid. And as you mouse over them in the future, we will add more in the way of information due to specificity, the requirements that we'll learn about. So as you mouse over, S13.0xxa for initial encounter, you'll be able to see whether or not, this code has been, paid in the past or not, or what the recommended code is, so you don't have to keep searching. So we plan on adding that as we keep going here, but it's going to take a learning curve for us to be able to put that information in there. So we've designed a feedback system, a learning system for us to learn that and make sure that you guys have it moving forward. So that's about all the insight I can give to that one. Anything else that you wanted to add to that, Jess?
No, I think that that covers that.
At this point, though, I do see one other question. This has been a non-payment on procedure codes, not necessarily due to diagnosis code, just randomly not paying. Randomly not paying? Yes, we've definitely seen randomly not paying before, but nothing on a large scale enough that I can comment on any further than what that is. So, all right, a great follow-up comment. He goes, I think they might be doing this thinking that their billers are overwhelmed, just FYI for the group. So thank you, Dr. Clark. So Jess, do you mind taking us through how every single doctor on this webinar might start practicing if they don't already know how?
Sure. All right. So when you want to come in and start playing around with the ICD-10 widget, and you don't want to be playing around with real patients quite yet, the first thing you're going to do, you want to switch over to the beta version just so everything is going to match exactly what I'm going to show you. So just go up to versions and beta if you're not already on beta. You can see what server you are on in the address bar of your web browser, just the word before Vericle. Most of you will be directed automatically to one of the app servers. So it'll say APP 1, 2, 3, or 4 up there. But just go ahead, go to versions, and select beta to switch to this server. And then you're going to go into one of your dummy accounts. And on the primary tab, go ahead and select the payer as fake payer ICD-10 only. So go ahead and type in the word fake and click the search. You're going to have the 3 options. You want to click the one that says ICD-10 only and hit save on the patient account. And that way you'll be able to see this is exactly how the system is going to behave come October 1st. If you've had ICD-9 codes on there already because you've been using this dummy patient previously, you'll see that the ICD-10 button might be yellow, it might be red. Actually, if you switched it to the fake payer, it will be red. Or if you've actually already gone in there and been playing around and you have ICD-10 code selected, it might be green. So your options really are going to be red or green. But then you can go ahead and click on that button. It's going to bring you straight to the Diagnosis ICD-10 tab. It's going to list any of the ICD-9s that you had previously billed in order to map them over to the ICD-10s.
Yeah, you're gonna need to do this in order to prepare. And just remember that as you're choosing the favorites, you are actually preparing for October 1 when you're actually seeing your first couple of patients. And I would make a strong recommendation if you start getting a handle on this even today to start choosing ICD-10 codes, especially for your new patients, as quickly as you can. So if there are, let me just look to see if there are any questions on this right now, Jess.
Sure, and just a question that I've had, selecting the ICD-10 codes now is fine. You can have them on the account. You can have them in the notes. They're not going to hurt anything, so there's no reason to hold off.
Oh, one of the doctors asked us to slow down. And Dr. Simmons, if there's something you wanted us to go over again there, we can absolutely do it a little bit slower. So just let us know. It is one comment that was made to us before, Jess, that we've struggled with a little bit. So, all right, then we've got a couple of very helpful suggestions that we can probably not share. But they are funny, though. The only other thing to say about this is there is another question. Does diagnosing more codes with specificity minimize the chance? Right now, we don't know what codes. We don't know what codes are going to increase or decrease chances for payment or audit in the future. So at this point, the recommendation, if you watch Dr. Davila's, it'll tell you, go ahead and get the best code that you're thinking about, and then let Vericle tell you which code it is. But you still have the responsibility of making sure you're documenting the best that you know how for the code that you're choosing. Okay, so one of the doctors said that there might be a little bit of a delay, Jess, between our words and what's coming through on the screen. So,
that might be part of the problem with the going too fast. Got it.
So. And keep in mind, everyone, we're from New Jersey. This part of it we just can't help. All right. So the only other thing to talk about right now is once you've done this, once you've created your dummy patient, once you've favorited your top 10 codes, what do you have to do next? What do you have to worry about? And this is all the back-end stuff that we wanted to leave you with today. And that is not much other than actually listening to the notifications and clearing the provider claims workbench. If there is a notification that you need to see and you don't do anything about it while you're on the billing and EHR screen, that claim will be sent to your workbench.
Actually, Jason, if it's about the ICD-10 codes, we even went a step further.
Okay, great.
If they need to select ICD-10 codes and they try to hit submit without selecting those codes, we'll warn them that there's a validation that they haven't addressed and ask if they want to review or just bill anyway. And if they hit bill anyway, we're going to stop them again and say, you need ICD-10 codes. So we basically don't let them leave the travel card without selecting ICD-10 codes. If they somehow manage to get around these pop-ups warning you that you need ICD-10 codes, we will then, of course, stop those claims from going out the door and stick them on the workbench. Yep,
perfect. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, I know not all payers have switched over to ICD-10. And in that particular case, if you have ICD-9 and ICD-10 codes, selected, and we know that payer is only selecting ICD-9, the back-end system is going to do all the work for you. It'll put the right codes on the claim that's being sent out, and you won't have to worry anything about it. If that payer, moves after October 1 from ICD-9 to ICD-10, we'll also take care of that. And there are some payers, a small group, that we don't even have a read on just yet. We don't know if they're ICD-10 ready and they haven't released anything. And if that's the case, we're going to submit with your ICD-10s. That's going to be our default. And if a rejection comes back, we'll tag that claim and add a validation in our system so that you guys will know what has to be done with that payer moving forward so you have the right claims selected. So on the back end, it's basically just listening to the notifications that come through. And that's really about the crux of the content that we wanted to share. Just going to go over my agenda now. I don't know what it is that, I know I'm not sharing my screen, but we have shared everything on the agenda. So let me just see what other questions were asked, Jess.
Okay.
Well, we got something else from somebody who's, for your information, compared to other doctors' offices and their software, you guys are head and shoulders above them and have made this as easy as I've seen. So thank you very much. And to Dr. Kayla, who was not able to hear a portion of it, she asked if this is recorded. Yes, it is. And so we probably could send you just this one, but we have done a number of these now, and so just one more time for everybody, if you can just show them that help sign so she can see where to get 99% of this information.
Sure. All right. The easiest way you're going to get this information, you're going to go on just the home screen, the screen that pops up as soon as you log into the system. In your alerts and messages box up at the top left, there will be rows about help pages being updated, and I'm going to keep the ICD-10 in this list. Usually they go away about after a week of being in there, but I'm going to keep updating the ICD-10 one so it stays in this list for you. So you can, easy access right there, just go ahead and click on ICD-10 in that alerts and messages square. It's going to pop up the help page. And then at the bottom of the page, there's a recording that Jason and I have done going over all the different features. So you can watch it right there.
Yeah, and so Dr. Clark, again, actually this time I could call it pleading with us. We need the training. So Jess, we've got to get the training done next
note
time.
Macros?
We will lead with the note macros training next time. We had about 60 plus doctors on today, and each week we've had close to that number. So we will absolutely lead with that next time. But we're nearly out of time today. So I will ask, are there any other questions that we could answer for you? Thank you as well for all those people who are typing in their gratitude, which is quite a few. So thank you so much for joining us today. We love having you guys as clients, and we know this is a big transition, and we're looking forward to making it as simple as we can for you guys. Again, thank you. Lots of people just type in and thank you. So it kind of looks like we might have our job done for today, Jess.
Awesome. All right.
All right. Well, thank you again, everybody. It was great having you. Thank you for listening to others' questions. I hope they were helpful for you. Your participation is always welcome, and thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. And Jessica, as always, wonderful job, and thank you.